Welcome to Thailand 2020. I am Tulip Naksomphop. This program will take a look into every aspect of Thailand's future. The issue of the discrimination against women has been highlighted not too long ago by the Secretary General of United Nations. Today, we will talk to the committee of the convention that specifically focus on this issue. Thailand has a population of 69 million, with the number of females slightly higher than the male population for only 2 to 3%. The United Nations reports that the rapid growth of the country masks socioeconomic inequalities, a widening income gap, uneven development between urban and rural areas, and unequal access to resources and social services. Some women's groups such as Muslim women in the Deep South, the Hill tribe women in the North, the HIV-positive women, women with disabilities, and migrant women workers still face discrimination and rights violation. Policies relating to women have become a regular part of the government agenda, and Thailand's efforts to implement the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, and the Beijing Platform for Action have had a visible impact on progress towards gender equality. Thailand ratified CEDAW in 1985 and the optional protocol in 2000. The 2007 Constitution guarantees the equality before the law and prohibits discrimination on multiple grounds, including on the basis of sex. Nevertheless, gender inequality remains a serious concern and is manifested in violence against women, discrimination, and human trafficking. Thailand is ranked in 103rd place with a score of 0.682 in the 2011 Human Development Index. The country ranked 69th out of 146 countries surveyed under the 2011 Gender Inequality Index and 60th place out of 135 countries under the Global Gender Gap Index for 2011. And today we are with the CEDAW committee member, Ms. Milena Pires. สวัสดีค่ะ First of all, thank you very much for your time giving us today. You are in Thailand for the workshop?
Yes, the UN Women is organizing together with the International Commission of Jurists, funded by the Canadian government, this workshop on the application of CEDAW in the justice sector, sharing between the different countries that make up this program. So we are here in the next 2 days to discuss progress in this area.
First of all, we probably have to ask you to tell us a little bit background of CEDAW itself. It's the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women.
Yes, that's right. In terms of a Human Rights Convention, it's one of the most ratified conventions. There are currently 188 countries that are party to this convention. And at the moment, there are only 7 countries the world over that are not part of the convention.
Wow, okay.
In the region, in the Asia-Pacific region, we have Tonga and Palau in the Pacific that haven't ratified. In Southeast Asia, all of the countries have actually ratified and are party to the convention.
So when you say they ratify, it means they have to commit to the convention itself?
It means that these countries have agreed to abide by the convention to ensure that the measures in the convention addressing non-discrimination against women are implemented in their countries.
Would there be any consequence if any country ratified the convention and somehow they didn't or they couldn't abide by the convention?
Well, when countries decide to be part of this convention, they have the option to make reservations on particular aspects of the convention that they can't implement.
Right.
And that excuses them to a certain extent. But otherwise, the agreement of the party that ratifies the convention is actually to implement. There may be some situations where they may make progress in some areas of the convention and not others. But overall, the expectation and the commitment from the country is that they will abide by the convention.
What is the mission of the convention?
It's to end all forms of discrimination against women to ensure equality between women and men, to make sure that women are able to enjoy all their rights before the convention, their cultural, social, economic, political and civil rights. And countries that are party to the conventions must do everything that is within their reach to ensure that women are able to actually enjoy their rights.
When did the convention start? How is it begin?
The convention started came into effect in 1981.
Okay.
And it has been operating since then. It's a very important tool in terms of being a women's rights bill. And the role of the CEDAW committee is to discuss with the parties that have ratified the convention their progress on implementation of the convention, and also to identify and to recommend to the state parties specific actions that they need to take to improve their implementation of the convention.
So when you say with the parties that ratify the conventions, that mainly work with the government of those countries or also the civil societies as well?
The government is mainly responsible for the implementation of the convention, but the committee also places a lot of importance on the participation of civil society in providing information to the committee, for example, when state parties are due to report on progress that they have made. We also place a lot of importance on the role of the legislature in accompanying the implementation of the convention, and of course there are also the other arms of the state, for example the judiciary, that is also very important.
So it sounds more like CEDAW is focused on the policymaker?
Both the policymakers, the legislators, as well as the judicial branch.
Since it's 188 countries has ratified the convention, it means there must be big diversity of culture and religions. Would that make the approach or strategy for CEDAW really different from one region to another, or it's more like the religion that's the main factor?
In effect, religion, culture and tradition does have an impact on how progress is made, but the convention applies equally across the board, and even though the committee does take into consideration that there are different factors affecting the implementation of the convention, state parties are still bound to overcome some of those hindrances and fully implement the convention.
So when you say each country can reserve some parts of some agreement that they would definitely not be able to abide to, that has to be agreed upon before they start, what's it called, abide themselves to the implementation. So it's very tailor-made to each country when it comes to the detail.
The committee actually has expressed concern about the reservations that countries enter into when they're ratifying the convention. And we actually prefer that there are no reservations. Sometimes because of specific laws that need to be revoked or need to be reviewed, a country may make a reservation, but the committee will accompany the progress of implementation and amendment of that particular piece of legislation and encourage the country to withdraw those reservations when there is no legal impediment to the implementation of this specific area of the convention.
So the main work of CEDAW is to eliminate the discrimination against women. Before we narrow down to the region, it's the whole world. What is the most concerning issues at the moment?
Violence against women is one of the recurring themes. Even in countries that are very well known for advancing women's rights, for example, in the Nordic countries, violence against women is still a very, very big concern. In fact, in some of the Nordic countries, the killing of women by their partners,
the spouse,
yes,
right.
Is one of the highest incidents of
you mean cause of death?
Women, yes, of the cause of death. In other regions, there are other concerns. It may be access to schooling, for example, low retention rates of children, particularly girls, in the school. It varies across the region, but there are some recurring themes.
Right. How about this region, Asia Pacific?
Asia Pacific, violence against women continues to be a big concern. Issues of migrant workers is also a very big concern here in the region, as well as trafficking of women.
Right. Violence against women and the trafficking is something we just hear more about it in the past couple of years, right?
I think as globalization takes hold, as people become more mobile, it also opens the possibility for people to be trafficked. The borders are much more porous, and the committee is very concerned that each of the state parties take very specific measures to address these issues, from legislative measures to awareness raising, prevention programs, and also to make sure that the victims of trafficking, for example, have the right services, that they're supported.
If we narrow down to ASEAN region, what is the violence against women will still be the most concerning issues?
In some countries, violence against women is still a big concern, and also access to justice. For example, in some countries that have come from conflict situations, access to justice is a very, very big issue. Often we find that as a country moves forward into normalcy, issues like access to justice for victims of violence during conflicts, for example, are put back. But of course, it's an issue that continues to need to be addressed. But again, it varies. It depends very much on the specific country situation.
If we come down to the country by country, what do you think will be, which country you think will be the most concerned in this region when it comes to discrimination against women? Is it in all forms across the board, or should we focus on the violence against women?
In terms of discrimination, I don't think I can say in this region that there is one particular country that is not of concern. I think the emphasis and the type of concern will vary, but there is concern of the committee in the reports that we have examined of the countries in the region, that there continues to be different types of discrimination faced by women.
So you're in Thailand this time for a CEDAW workshop?
Yes.
Is it CEDAW SIP? Is it the part of this workshop?
The workshop that is happening in the next 2 days is part of the CEDAW Southeast Asia program, a program that is driven by UN Women. It includes 7 countries in the region. Thailand is one of the countries, as well as Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Timor-Leste, Indonesia, and Myanmar. So in the next 2 days, the program has brought together legal actors, judges from each of those countries, and they will be sharing their experiences of how they apply CEDAW in their work. There will be 2 products coming out of this conference. One is the registry of actually references that are made by the judges when they're deciding on cases to CEDAW. And another one is to look at how gender stereotypes actually affect the decisions that are made in the courts.
It might sound like a normal question or irrelevant. Can I ask, when each government send their representatives to attend this kind of workshop, would we see more female or male representatives in this kind of event?
I think
is that relevant?
It is. I think it is very relevant. One of the principles in furthering women's rights is actually the inclusion of men. It's very, very important that men are made aware that they're sensitive to discrimination against women, so that they can also be agents of change. I think in terms of this particular workshop, I think a gender balance is always an objective of the organizers. And I think at the moment it's pretty even. I think some delegations are trying very hard to make sure that they have a gender balance in their representatives. And I think it's pretty much an awareness that is already there amongst the different governments.
So in terms to answer to CEDAW mission, beside workshop, what other activities does CEDAW have to regularly doing?
The program, the CEDAW CEP program also looks at training for the judicial actors, developing training materials that are
related to these issues?
Yes, that are developing training materials that are inclusive of women's human rights. The awareness raising amongst the judicial actors continues also through the training institutions, as well as this sharing between the different legal actors.
When you mention gender balance, I believe that most people, when they talk about discrimination against women, they will just focus on the female. But actually, it's very important to make the other half aware of what's going on. And that's another part of the mission that CEDAW have to do.
In terms of the legislative change, I guess we can put it like that, that needs to take place. It's very, very important that legislators, for example, are aware of the impact of the laws that they're adopting. CEDAW has this principle of non-discrimination that is based on direct discrimination and indirect discrimination. And often laws that are enacted may seem to be quite neutral and may seem to be on the surface equally beneficial to women and men. But when they're actually implemented, they may actually contribute to discrimination against women. So this is definitely an area that the program is trying to raise awareness about. So the inclusion of men and women in these programs, the awareness raising, the sensitivity that needs to be raised is also extremely important for this.
So since the start in 1981 until now, what has changed? Has the focus changed, or has the implementation been developed any differently from its start, or so far has been a straight line to the goal?
In terms of changes that have taken place, the convention itself is very flexible. It's a dynamic document. So forms of discrimination, for example, that were included in the convention when the convention was drafted, there have been emerging forms of discrimination, and the convention certainly provides for that. For example, not that violence against women didn't exist before, but the different forms of violence against women, I think, has been expanded on in the convention, in the application of the convention, and through the committee's interpretation of the convention.
So
you may have to edit this part.
So it's more like the implementation and the convention itself also have been revolved to stay with the current situation?
Absolutely.
Can I ask, is there anything surprise the committee times to times, any new issues just arise lately regarding the discrimination against women?
Issues of sexual orientation and gender identity, for example, are issues that are becoming more of a focus of the committee now. Especially because I think some of the work of the civil society organizations in documenting cases of discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity has become much stronger. So this information is coming to the committee. So the committee is raising these issues for discussion with the state parties. Not all state parties are prepared to discuss these issues. Some are quite sensitive to the particular country or region involved. But I think that's one change. Some years back, the issue of abortion was also one of the issues that became a very, sensitive issue. So I think you see different trends in the application of the convention, issues that concern different countries at different times. And I think this is part of the dynamism of the convention.
Interesting, because when people talk about discrimination against women, we barely think of the gender orientation or gender identification, like you said. We just gonna focus on physical gender since birth, but it's actually another rising issue for this topic as well. So what would be the biggest obstacle in terms of to eliminate the discrimination against women in this region?
In relation to sexual orientation and gender identity?
In terms of the work of CEDAW, since you start working until now, what would you say will be the obstacles that keep coming up and maybe slow down the process? Or
I think one issue that is raised particularly in this region every so often has to do with cultural relativism. I think there is an argument that is tried to put forward that this region has a very specific way of dealing with these issues, and that often when you're talking about discrimination against women, not all types of discrimination should apply. I think the committee holds a very steady line that not only applies to this region but also applies to other regions of the world. That very much when we're talking about women's rights, human rights is really the gatekeeper. You may have different ways of approaching the issue. You may be able to do different things at different times, but at the end of the day, the convention does require the state parties to end discrimination against women and to move towards equality between women and men.
And no one should be able to use a tradition or culture or religion to limit the basic human rights.
That's the basis of the convention.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. At least today we learned a little more about CEDAW and what actually it is doing. And this is the first time actually when people talk about women's rights and then the gender orientation actually included in the topic. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
When it comes to the topic of discrimination against women, gender balance and gender identification are also part of the issues that need to be addressed. Until we see you next time in Thailand 2020, I am Tulip Naksampok. สวัสดีค่ะ